go? Ready? 20 seconds. Okay.
Yes, I think everybody should be able to hear me, right? Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our regular Education USA presentations here at America House on Thursday. Okay, nope, no, you cannot see me. So today we're going to be talking about the Common Application, and we're really thrilled to have a guest speaker with us tonight, Justin Van Dyke, representing New York University in Abu Dhabi, and I'm going to give the floor to you. Thank you for coming.
Great, thanks so much for the introduction. So today I'll be giving you an overview of New York University. I'll talk a little bit more in depth about the campus in Abu Dhabi, the one that I specialize in. And I'll also go into a lot more detail in the application process. So the beginning of the presentation will give you more of an idea about the university, and then we can get down to the really nitty-gritty parts of the Common Application, because I know it's a system that really isn't familiar to a lot of you. So just to go ahead and start off, I want to talk about the kind of foundation of NYU. This idea that NYU is a global network university. So when you apply as undergraduate students, you actually have 3 different campuses to apply to. The campus in New York City, the campus in Abu Dhabi, and the campus in Shanghai. So it's the same university and the same degree, but each campus is a little bit different in terms of the academic programs that are available, so the majors and areas of study. They're also different in terms of financial support and scholarship programs. And they're also different in the way that just New York, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai are 3 really different cities from each other. But what they all have in common is all 3 of them are very international, cosmopolitan. They're cities that are really at the crossroads, I would say culturally and geographically, of their respective parts of the world. I'm guessing for most of you who are here today, if you've heard of New York University before, it's this campus. Well, let's see, I think I'm not quite on the slide. I think I may be on the wrong presentation. Hold on one second. There we are. So this campus in New York City, and lately I've been saying that maybe this campus is the least American style campus that NYU has, and that this is your campus in New York. It's Washington Square Park and Greenwich Village and Manhattan. You know, there are no campus walls. It's a university that's really a part of the city. And this may be a bit different from the American universities that you've seen in movies and TV. It's a very different approach. We like to say that not only are we located in New York City, but we're a part of New York City. We're a part of the cultural fabric there. And your experiences in the city at large are also a really key part of your experiences at the university and your academic experiences. We have a huge range of programs. There are over 230 different areas of study. I think everything except for architecture and fashion design. So I apologize if that's your jam. There may be a few other schools you would want to go to in New York City. But otherwise, it's a huge selection of academic programs. And it really mimics the opportunities that are available there in the city. And New York is really one of those cities where you can jump on the subway and travel the world. There are neighborhoods for pretty much any country and ethnicity you can think of. And so, this kind of diversity and chaos is what we want students to have access to. We have students from 133 different countries. In fact, NYU is the most international university in the US. For the past 4 years, it's come in #1 in terms of bringing in international students. So there are more international students studying at NYU than any other university in the US. And it's also #1 in terms of sending students abroad. So more students spend time away from their home campus at New York than any other university in the US. So this idea of being in and of New York has kind of moved to being in and of the world. The most recent campus to open is the one in Shanghai. And you can see right away that the composition of the student body is different from the one in New York City, and that it's half Chinese students and half international students. So there's much more of an emphasis on learning about Chinese language and culture. No matter if you're studying business or economics or biology, you're going to get a chance to connect with that country and that region. In fact, if you as a Ukrainian student come to NYU Shanghai and matriculate, you'll be required to have a Chinese roommate in your first year, so this kind of cultural immersion begins from day one. And you'll also be required to study Mandarin across your 4 years to get some kind of proficiency in the language, so that no matter what you're studying, when you graduate, you have this added depth of knowledge of this part of the world. So if this is something that interests you, if you're looking for a US degree, a liberal arts and sciences curriculum, but a chance to spend time and get a deeper understanding of China, then this can be an interesting opportunity for you. We do have some financial support available in the form of merit-based scholarships at this campus. I'll move along now and give a little bit more information about the campus in Abu Dhabi. This campus was founded with a very special premise, this idea of being the world's honors college. I know honors and college may be terms that don't necessarily link up with your ideas of university in Europe, but really what the idea behind this was to bring together the best and the brightest students from around the world, give them the opportunity to study in a very diverse environment with really incredibly talented professors and very small classes so that they could have an academic experience that allows them to become global leaders. So we currently have students from, I think, over 120 different countries, which is true of the campus in New York City. The difference here is that we really don't have a majority from any one part of the world. The biggest number of students from one country come from the UAE, obviously, but they only make up about 14% of the student population. After that, the next biggest country is probably, I mean, it varies from year to year. The numbers kind of change, but probably, students from the US and North America, but also about the same amount from Europe and Asia and Latin America. So at the end of the day, there really is no cultural norm. You can't put your finger on it and say, NYU Abu Dhabi is this culture. It certainly feels very New York, very NYU. But by the same turn, it also feels, a bit Middle Eastern. There's a bit of Abu Dhabi infused in there, but also a bit Latin, a bit Asian. And it's because of the students coming from so many different backgrounds. The other very special thing about this campus is the student-faculty ratio. We have a very low student-faculty ratio, so that most classes are around 10 students maximum. So instead of sitting in giant lecture halls with someone just talking at you, and I apologize, I'm going to be doing this for a while, but hopefully it'll get a little more interactive towards the end. It's much more discussion-based. Your professors work with you closely. You actually get to participate in their research projects from the very beginning. So this is a very different approach from most European universities. The other special thing about this campus is the financial support. We do have very generous need-based scholarships that basically work to ensure that if you're offered a place on campus, we can provide you with all the funding you need to enable you to come to the university. So New York City, Shanghai, Abu Dhabi, these are kind of the three motherships. These are the three main degree-granting campuses to which you can apply directly and spend, the majority of your 4 years studying there. But in addition to those cities, we also have academic centers in all of these cities. So in every one of these cities, we have classrooms and facilities and dorms, so that it's not a study abroad or a transfer to another university, but in each of these cities, you're taking NYU classes with NYU professors, bringing along your NYU financial support. So we really like to call it study away, because it's not a study abroad. You're already abroad in this experience. These are chances where you're getting a chance to spend time away from your home campus and deepen your knowledge of a different part of the world. So it could be studying in Paris in your second year, just because you want to deepen your knowledge of French language and explore that city. Or you could choose to spend the next semester in Shanghai in your junior year, because you want to do a little bit more research specifically in that region. So it's really a unique network that I don't think many other US institutions have, in that, if you're an economics major and you decide next year you want to study abroad, you can go into the Global Study Planner and it will tell you, okay, next year there are courses that are required for your major that are being taught in Shanghai, Berlin, and London. So you can kind of find these pathways throughout this global network. I'll talk a little bit more about the academic program now. And I won't go into really specific details, but what I want to do is highlight the differences between this kind of curriculum and a curriculum at a European university. I'm guessing to some of you this liberal arts and sciences curriculum may be a word you've heard before, but I just want to highlight the biggest difference between this this kind of curriculum and the curriculum at a European university. And I think really the biggest thing is that you can apply undecided. You can apply to us and say, I really want to come to your university. I'm excited about what you're doing there, but I just don't know what I want to do yet. I'm really interested in biology, but I've also always wanted to try some theater. That's something that is a positive. We're excited to have students who want to come and explore and really figure out what their academic passion is. I would say this applies to most liberal arts and sciences colleges in the US, that you don't have to apply directly to the Faculty of Economics or the mathematics faculty, but you can actually come on board and say, you know, I want to have this academic journey. I want to try a few different things and see where I end up. We do this for a multitude of reasons. I mean, the obvious one being that we don't expect you to already know what you want to study, you know, for your 4 years or, you know, beyond that. We want to give you time to explore. But we also want to work on these core skills of academia, things like analysis, research, writing, public speaking, these skills that teach you how to create knowledge, not just memorize things and repeat them for exams in a giant lecture hall. We want you to really engage and do this kind of academic work. So it's designed to do that in a few different ways. One, of course, by allowing you to come in undecided. The other is by having a core curriculum. So this is a set of course areas. There are 4 course areas that correspond roughly to arts and social sciences and natural and computational sciences. But the courses within them allow you to have kind of an academic exploration. The example I've been using for years now, just because I find it fascinating, is there's a course in the sciences core called Mortal and Immortal Questions, where you study immortality, you know, from a scientific standpoint. So aging, cell death, why do things die? What would happen if people stopped dying? But also, how has immortality been represented in art, in religion, and mythology? So by the end of this course, you've looked at one subject through a number of different lenses. You've looked at it as a scientist, but also as an artist. And we do this, you know, to give you a taste of different things, to see if maybe you would be more interested in the arts or more in biology, but also to enable you to communicate with people from other disciplines, so that, you know, if you decide that you want to be a fine arts major, that you will have to sit in a classroom with a biologist and with an engineer, so that you learn to communicate across these, you know, outside of these academic silos. These are the NYU degrees that are available. This is kind of the greatest hits of liberal arts and sciences. It's a pretty broad range. You see there are arts and humanities, so things like arts, film, literature, philosophy, and theater. Also social sciences, things like political science and public policy. Also natural and computational sciences, of course, computer science, mathematics, biology, physics, and engineering as well. There's a general engineering program, including disciplinary tracks in certain engineering fields. So you'll get to pick one of these as your major, but since it's this liberal arts and sciences curriculum, if you can't make up your mind, if you can't choose between majoring in biology and, you know, studying theater as well, you can do both. You can pick one as a minor. So we have 20 disciplinary minors that pull from the other areas you saw before. So if at the end of the day you can't make that decision, you can do both in a way. We also have multidisciplinary minors. So if there are things that kind of fall in between these disciplines, things like legal studies, peace and conflict studies, the environment. So, you know, if you were a biology major but you were really interested in conservation work, you could do a major in biology and a minor in the environment. Or if your interest in the environment was more about, you know, sustainability, you could do economics in the environment. So it allows you to kind of dial in what you're studying. We also have pre-professional courses. So for students who are sure they want to continue on to professional schools, like law school or business or education, these are tracks that prepare students to enter those kinds of universities. In terms of student resources, before I talk about, you know, what's available on campus in terms of the labs and so on, I want to talk about the people that you get connected with, because this is a really key part of the experience at NYU Abu Dhabi. Before you even arrive on campus, you get an academic advisor who's kind of like a navigator. You know, if you come to them and say, you know, I'm really interested in biology and theater. I don't know why I picked those two today, but we'll stick with it. I'm really interested in biology and theater. What should I do? So they'll say, okay, take this core colloquia course on water, where you explore kind of the significance of water, you know, and, you know, biology and human needs, but also the representation of water and literature. You know, try this, but also take a biology course and take a theater course. Then come back to me after the semester and let's see how it goes. And then you can come in and say, well, I think I'm going to go with biology. And after your first year, you come back, and if you've changed your mind and decided, you know, I think theater is really going to be it for me, I think I want to do that, you can do it. You know, if you make that decision in the European system, what happens? You go all the way back to the beginning and start over. With the liberal arts and sciences curriculum, that's something that's fine. You may have to fine-tune things a little bit, but it's this process of building your degree with your advisor, to have this journey and, you know, to change your mind. I think more than 90% of students change their mind at least once. So this is something that's built into the system. But let's say at the end of the day you've decided on theater, this is going to be your major, you've already been working with a professor in this field, you can choose them as your mentor. So you'll have a mentor who basically guides you through the process of completing all the requirements for your major, also on completing all requirements for your capstone project as well. Students are expected to complete a final project. And for a lot of students I talk to, they tell me that these people end up being like a second set of parents to them. You know, they're people that they can trust to give them information, you know, on their academics, but also their life, you know, what they're going to do with the degree in theater, to just pick that out again, or biology, you know, all the different things. And I would say the same thing goes for career advising. There's a career advising department that helps you, you know, with basic things like writing your CV and interview skills, but also connecting with internship opportunities, so that, you know, by the time you graduate, you've had practical experience in your field, and you've also started to build up a network of contacts, so that you know what you can do with your degree. I think for the class that just graduated last year, we had 97% of students who were either in graduate school or had a job within 6 months of graduation. So it's a really high success rate. And I believe something like 42% of them had multiple job offers by their senior year. So there's a really strong connection with helping students find these opportunities and have successful careers after their undergraduate degree. I'll talk briefly about the campus now. And it's always a bit of a challenge to explain this campus, just because I haven't been to many other places in the world that are like this campus. So I'll just cut to a picture here to kind of give you an idea of the way things are laid out. So if you look kind of in the middle here, you'll see this bridge and the wooden railing. So from there down is really the academic part of campus. So this is where you'll have the labs. This is actually the experimental research building to the bottom left here. And where we have the labs for the life sciences and engineering. We also have social sciences labs across from there. If you walk down this causeway to the other end, you'll get to the Arts Center. So all of your kind of basic daily necessities, so the Student Services Center, you know, the restaurants and cafes, and you know, travel agency, pharmacies, salons, those kinds of things. It's like a miniature city on this lower level. But then up above that, you have what we call the High Line. It's like the High Line in New York City, if you've ever been there. It's this kind of elevated park space. So up on this higher level here, you have all of the faculty residences and the student dorms. So it feels a bit more like a neighborhood. It's a little bit more cozy, and you have a lot of kind of green park space to just kind of hang out with your friends or study. So it doesn't feel like you're sleeping next to your biology class. You're not like that mixed up. You have this kind of quieter area up above the rest of campus. So before I continue, are there any questions about the academics or life on campus? I'll just catch my breath here. Mm-hmm.
Just a short question.
Sure.
So how many students live in one room?
So generally we have 4 students to a room, and there's this kind of suite area where you have 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a kind of shared living room and kitchen area. So maximum you're sharing a bedroom and bathroom with one other person. You also have quad rooms as you become an upperclassman, or if you're just a really lucky freshman, where they have 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms in that same kind of area.
And you still have the same rule as in Shanghai, right? For students from 4 different countries?
Generally, they try to arrange it that way. Great. So now I'll move on to the application process. And before I get into those nuts and bolts that we'll be spending the the rest of the presentation on, I want to talk about who the ideal NYU Abu Dhabi student is. And really, the ideal student for any top international university. I think these are the qualities that we're looking for. This is, I think, one of the most important slides in my presentation. So if there's one that you take notes on or you take a picture of, this is really key. Because this is what sets the application apart from applying to European universities. So, of course, academic excellence. We want to see students who have strong grades, who do very well in the classroom setting, that they can take their exams, they can do this research and analysis. This is really key to succeed academically. But this alone is not enough. It's not enough just to get an excellent grade on your exam or to really do well on your ZNOs. You actually need to have this sense of intellectual curiosity. You know, plain and simple, we want students who love to learn, who are really eager to gain more information. You know, whether it's in your math class learning a new theorem or out, you know, visiting a new city and trying a new food. You know, this kind of eagerness to expand yourself, to have new experiences that goes beyond just doing it to get the degree so you can graduate and get a great job and make a lot of money. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You know, that pursuit is great. But we also want students who would do it anyway because they love it, because they really love to learn new things and to broaden themselves. So that intellectual curiosity is really key for liberal arts and sciences universities. We also want students with broad interests. You know, this doesn't mean that you can't be really sure that you want to study biology when you come in and say, you know, that's going to be your major for the beginning. That's perfectly fine. But we want a student that says, you know, that course on immortality sounds really cool. I want to take that. And a student who is open to trying new things and won't be just laser focused on one thing. So we want to see students that have that broad set of interests. We also want students with some kind of leadership ability. This doesn't mean that you have to be class president or captain of the football team. Again, great if you are. But what we're really looking for are for students who've pursued something that they're interested in and had accomplishments in those areas. So no matter what it is outside of the class, I mean, it could be taking care of a little brother or sister or doing paid work, but we want to see that you're pursuing things, that you have this maturity to accomplish things in the areas that you're interested in. So really, by definition, any kinds of responsibilities that you take on outside of the classroom. We also want students with a kind of sense of global citizenship. I know this is probably a term that gets passed around a lot, and there are probably a lot of different definitions of, you know, what this means. For us, really, what a student with a kind of global mindset is a student who, you know, is really eager to have 3 roommates from the opposite corners of the world from them, and, you know, have those kinds of conversations, but also to be in a classroom where their perspectives on the world will be challenged. You know, you can imagine, you know, if you're in a history class at NYU Abu Dhabi and you're studying the Cold War and you're there with a student from Russia, a student from Ukraine, a student from the US, a student from Germany, you know, everyone in that room would have learned about that point in history from a different perspective. So it immediately pushes you outside of that comfort zone. So we want students who are excited by that prospect, to have these ideas challenged, to have all of these different perspectives offered to them. So it doesn't mean that you have to travel the world and be jet set and visited all of these different countries. You know, maybe you never even left Kiev. But the idea is you have this in your heart, that whatever you're going to graduate with, whether you're going to be, you know, a theater director or a biologist or a politician, God forbid, that what you're doing with your degree makes a positive change in the world. That's really the core of this sense of global citizenship. And I know for a lot of students, after I list all these things out, they think, how am I going to tell someone about my intellectual curiosity? Like, that is not showing up on my ZNOs or my SAT test. Like, that's like, how do I telegraph this? This is really the way. This is the assessment model that NYU uses and a lot of other US institutions. So we're looking at your academics, but we're also looking at what you're doing outside of classroom and your personal fit, this intellectual curiosity, this global citizenship. So there isn't one part that's more important than the other. We really are looking for your academic abilities. We want to see that you can do well on those exams and that you can, memorize things, do your homework, this kind of core academic work. But we're also interested in your responsibilities outside of class. So we'll hear about these and the list of activities that you make, any leadership roles you've taken on, any awards you got in your extracurricular activities, and also this personal fit for NYU in particular, or whatever university you're applying to. We all want to know, why us? Why, out of the thousands of other universities you could apply to, why did you choose us? And by the same turn, why you? Out of the tens of thousands of students who are applying, what makes you a good fit for this university? So we do want to see that you've done your research and you've thought a little bit more in depth than, oh, I just heard NYU, I watched an episode of Gossip Girl and it seemed like a cool place, so that's where I want to go. We want to see a little bit more substantial thought go into that. So here are all the components for NYU's application. Again, some of these will apply to other universities, but this is in particular what NYU requests. So the common application, and this is what I'll be going into more in depth in the second part of the presentation. It's an online application system that is used by many different US universities so that you can submit one common part that all universities want, and then answer a few particular questions for specific universities. So it can kind of save you a bit of time. But you'll have all of these main components. You'll have your personal and family demographics, also lists of your extracurricular activities, any academic honors you've received. There's a personal essay question that I'll talk about a little bit more in depth. And there's also an NYU question, why NYU, what I just talked about. A lot of universities want to know about this. You'll also need evaluations, so letters of recommendation from one from a counselor and one from a teacher. We recognize that for most of the world, students don't have a university counselor. It's just not a position that exists in their high school. And so in that case, we help guide students to pick the right person to fill in this role. So they don't absolutely have to be employed in this role. But for a lot of students, it's like a pedagogue or an English teacher, anyone who has access to your transcripts and official information about your school and can write overall about your accomplishments and your fit for the university. We also need a letter of recommendation from a teacher. So someone like your biology teacher who's had you in the classroom and can say, this is one of my best biology students in years, she's amazing, that kind of specific academic information. And you can also submit additional letters of recommendation. So if you've had a coach or a supervisor at work that can talk about what you've done outside of the classroom, that can often add a third perspective that gives a more rounded perspective of your accomplishments. So it's not necessary, but if you can think of anyone like that who could provide that information, then I would encourage you to approach them. And I'll talk about this later too, but as you're coming up with your ideas of who should write the letters of recommendation, be sure to start writing to them as soon as you begin your application to kind of prepare them to take on this task, just in case they're not going to be available or it's going to take them a lot more time. That's something you really want to prepare them with. Also, your transcripts, so your grades from your last 3 or 4 years of secondary school, however long the program takes, we want to see those grades. And then some kind of standardized test. NYU has a testing policy that is test flexible. This means we do require a test, but we're flexible on which one you submit. So it doesn't have to absolutely be the SAT. It could be APs or IB diploma if you're doing the IB, or if you're in the Ukrainian national curriculum, it can be the ZNO. So if you submit that, we know the timeline is a little bit off, so we accept predicted grades. So I think we have over 100 different national exams we accept. And because for most of the world, you don't apply to university so early, we understand this, so we accept predictions from your counselor or whoever is submitting that academic information. Which takes me to the next slide. So this is what we need from your school. So the evaluation from a teacher, a report from your school, so that's what comes from your counselor type recommender. Also their letter of recommendation. Your transcripts, again, from your last 3 or 4 years of secondary school. And then some exam result. So you'll notice this says from the school. So we'll need to receive this from your counselor, just so that there's the separation, so that you're not writing your own letters of recommendation and sending in your own test scores. We want a little bit of independence there. So this is basically the package of things that you have to prepare. The next steps will depend on the university. For NYU Abu Dhabi in particular, we have a candidate weekend. So if you submit your application and we read it and we see all of these amazing things that I've talked about, the intellectual curiosity, the sense of global citizenship, academic strength, if we read your application, we say, this is the one, this student is a really great fit, then we'll invite you to come to candidate weekend. So we'll fly you to Abu Dhabi for a 3-day weekend that is really exhausting, but just as exciting, where you get to take sample classes, live on campus, have conversations with students and faculty, but also, go to the beach, go to the desert, go to Yas Island, kind of explore the city and see if it's a right fit for you. See if this is a place where you feel like you'll thrive academically and personally and just overall. And really, by the same turn, it's a chance for us to get to know you and see if you're a right fit for the university. So after this, if it's a right fit, then you'll be offered admission. Other universities sometimes have interview processes as well, either by Skype, or I think there are a few others that may have in-person interviews. But this is sometimes a component of the application process. In terms of financial support, to be eligible for the financial support at the Abu Dhabi campus that I mentioned at the beginning, you'll need to submit another application, which is a completely different system, called the CSS profile. So this basically is an application that collects information about your family's financial background and provides the university with a report so that if you're offered admission, we can look at this and then make the offer for your financial support. So this is something that really happens in parallel with your common application. So you'll need to fill this out, and of course you'll need your parents' help with all of that information. And it's important to start early and to write if you have any questions to the financial support department. But this is really the key. If you're admitted to the university, at the same time, you'll receive the package based on this information. In terms of financial aid in general to US universities, there are two different kinds, well, maybe more than that, but the two main kinds are merit-based, so based on some great aspect of you. So, being the best physics student or being the best basketball player, something that you've done is great and merits financial support. The other kind of financial support is need-based. So it's not based on your accomplishments, but on what your family's financial need is. So some universities give a mix of these awards, but it will depend on the university itself. For the Abu Dhabi campus, it's mainly need-based and really designed to make sure that if you're admitted, you don't have to take on any kind of debt to finance your education. So these are the deadlines and the decision timelines. It's a bit of a confusing matrix, but I'll use this to explain the basic differences between regular decision and early decision. Is this a concept some of you have heard before? Okay, great. So the obvious is that if you apply early decision, you get the results of your application earlier. If you apply regular decision, you receive it on the normal deadline. So January 1st to April 1st is regular decision. If you apply early decision on November 1st, then you find out by mid-December. The other main difference between early decision and regular decision is that it's a binding agreement. So you're applying and saying, here's my application. If you offer me a place, I promise I'll come. 100%, this is my dream school, I'll be there, just give me a chance. So if you're admitted on an early decision deadline, we expect that you'll attend. We also have an early decision deadline on January 1st. So if you are really excited about NYU and it's your #1 school and you want to make this commitment, but you still want a little bit more time, maybe to get in your fall grades or to work on your essay a little bit longer, then you can still apply early decision on January 1st. Are there any questions about this process?
Can you please explain how to submit predicted scores for the ZNO if I don't take the SAT?
Okay, great question. So for predicted scores, if you submit anything, whether it's ZNO or IB, with predicted scores, we expect that if you're offered admission, that your final results will come close to that. And so we'll be asking for those as soon as they're available.
So my counselor or like my teacher who I trust at school can fill it in and she'll write her math CNO for like 190,
Mhm.
and if I do that, then it's fine, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we understand that there's a little bit of change sometimes. So if it's just a little bit lower, then that's not an issue. But if you just took your foot off the gas and like got really low scores, then we would want to know what happened, because generally something has happened. You got sick or had something happen with your family, and so in those cases we want a little bit more of an explanation.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Is there a higher chance of being admitted if you're applying early?
It's really pretty evenly distributed across all 3 deadlines, so it's more of a personal preference for you. Technically, for a lot of universities, there are more places available earlier on. So as you get to regular decision, there may be fewer places available, but it's more about the personal fit, like how much time you need and how committed you are to attending the university. But the standards are all the same across all the deadlines, so it's not like we kind of lower them for any particular deadline. Any other questions? Great, then let's get into the complicated stuff. All right, so this is the Common App, for those of you who haven't seen it yet. And these are all the main tabs. So you have your dashboard here, where you can monitor the state of your application, which parts have been completed. You have My Colleges. So this is where you'll search for the universities that you're applying. Actually, that's under College Search. So here, if you're applying to NYU, for any of NYU's campuses, you search for New York University, you select it and add it, and it will show up here in your dashboard of the list of universities that you're applying to. And even if you expand this, you can see a little bit more in-depth information. Obviously, I've been a little slow in getting mine in this year. And if we go to the Common App tab, this is where all of the information that's common to all of the universities you're applying to, where it stays. So all of this generic information, it's important to remember that unless you're only applying to one university in the Common App, to keep this information a bit more generic. So in the essay, you may not want to say, oh, I really want to go to Columbia, it's my dream school, and then apply to NYU, So just keep it a little bit more generic in terms of the essay, and I'll talk about the essay a bit more in depth. The profile is pretty generic, how to enter your name, all of these details. What I will point out are things that may not be so obvious or maybe a little bit more US-centric. So let's see here. I think under demographics, so this is pretty US-centric. As you move through this application, you'll see that things automatically expand and close, and you'll also see on the right side of the screen here, you have answers to commonly asked questions. So if you find yourself getting stuck, it's usually right there because other people are having the same problems. The other thing you'll notice are these red stars. So these are put by the questions that are mandatory. So if it doesn't have a red star and you don't know the answer, then you really don't need to worry about answering it. So the demographic information, that's, again, more specific to the US. So again, I'm assuming none of you have a US Armed Forces status, or these other things may not be relevant to you. So it's completely fine to just say, yes, I've completed this to my satisfaction, and move on. Also, the number of years you've lived in the US. Again, this is probably not so relevant to you. So you can just put your country of birth, city of birth, number of years you've lived in the US, and however long you've been living your life outside the US. Citizenship, kind of the same deal. It asks about your citizenship status. And then down here, the fee waiver. So a fee waiver is basically a waiver that you can request so that you don't have to pay the application fee. If the application fee would be a financial burden on you, then you can click here, yes, that you're requesting a fee waiver. And this process will differ from university to university, so you'll have to check their website. But for NYU, you'll just need to write to admissions and tell them that you're requesting the fee waiver. And I mean, you don't need to write a huge essay, but just explain that it would be financial burden on you. And if you don't hear a response back from them within a few weeks, then you can just assume that it's been approved. So that's the process for NYU. For other universities, it may differ a bit. The next section is about your family information. Again, this is really straightforward. You'll just put in their details, also their education. And the next section is about your education. And one thing I want to stress here is that all of this is self-reported information. Many of these things we're also going to need to receive officially from your counselor. So you'll search for your school. We have a pretty big database of schools. If yours is not here, it'll prompt you to enter in the information. You'll put in when you began your studies at the secondary school. If it's a boarding school, yes, we expect that you'll graduate from your school if you're applying to university. And also your counselor's name. So this is where you'll put in the contact information of the person that you choose to be your counselor. You know, whether it's your English teacher or pedagogue or vice headmaster or whatever that person is. This is where the details will go, so it's important to include this. Also, if you spent time at other secondary schools, maybe if you spent a year abroad somewhere else, or if you've just moved around, you can indicate that here. And it will be the same process again that we saw at the top. For your current school, it will have you search for the other school and you'll enter that in and provide that information as well. There's also a section for colleges and universities. So if you've already graduated and begun studies at university, then you can enter this information here. One note for NYU, and for NYU Abu Dhabi in particular, is that you can apply not as a transfer student, so we don't currently accept transfers straight from university into NYU Abu Dhabi, but you can join as a first-year student at NYU. At other universities, they also have transfer possibilities, but NYU Abu Dhabi, it doesn't work in that way.
Is there any scholarship for transfer students?
I think there can be, but it will depend on the specific program. For NYU Abu Dhabi, the financial support just comes with the normal four-year program, but you'd have to check with the specific universities to see. The other,
But if I study in a university and then I want to enroll as a first year, can I apply for the scholarships as a first year?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the only thing that won't work is you won't be able to transfer the credits.
Right.
So like if you've studied for 1 year in Ukraine, you can't study for only 3 years at NYU Abu Dhabi, just because we want students to have that full 4-year experience. So it's completely fine. The only thing we don't suggest is if you've had more than 2 years of university study already, you know, if you're already almost done with your degree, then it doesn't really make sense for you to start back at the very beginning here. But otherwise, you're welcome to apply. And financial support follows that. The other thing you might want to use this section for is if you've had maybe, you know, a summer program at a university, or you've just taken one course over the summer or something like that, you can indicate the coursework here. This part with grades is one of the sections that I get the most questions on. So when you see this, don't panic. We don't expect that you have a cumulative GPA or know what class rank is or any of those things. For NYU especially, we don't really rely on these things necessarily. So if you don't have class rank, if your school doesn't calculate GPA, if you know your counselor or your advisor has no idea what that is, don't worry. You don't need to try and convert things. In fact, you'll notice here that the only question that's required is the graduating class size. So if you happen to know about how many students you're graduating with, you can put that here. I'm in a class of 1. Class rank, GPA, those kinds of things, you don't need to fill out. Your current or most recent year courses, these should be from your secondary school. Again, this is stuff that will have to be officially reported by your counselor, but this is a chance for you to just list those things and put the information in so that admissions has an idea of the classes that you're taking in your current year. So it will allow you.
Well, if I had like 22 classes.
That's a good question, and congratulations on surviving that. I would say do as many as it allows you to do. How many does it give you? 15? Pick your 15 favorite ones and go with those. Again, the transcripts that get submitted with from your counselor will reflect all those anyway. So this is just to give admissions a head up on what you're studying. The honors section, so this is for academic honors. So this is not the extracurriculars part, but just for things that you've done in the classroom. So your prize for being the #1 physics student, or for having completed, the choreography for your school play. These kinds of awards will go into the honors section. So anything that's more academic is listed here. And I'll be mentioning this a lot of times in this presentation, but it's really important to provide context. So when you list an honor, don't just say that, I got the XYZ prize, because we have no idea what that is in admissions. Give a little bit more detail, let us know, what it was for, when you did it, which year. Again, this 9, 10, 11, 12 is very US-centric. It's the last 4 years of your secondary school, which may be the same here. It's not.
Still 8 through 11.
Okay, yeah. So kind of make that transposition accordingly. And then it can be the level of recognition. So was it, for being the best physics student in Kiev or just in your school? You can indicate that level here. Community-based organizations. This, again, is really, really US-specific. But if you see some kind of organization that's helped you out with your application, I'm not sure if Education USA is listed here, but you can have a look. If there's been, some group that's helped you out, yeah, here we go. You can put that information in here so that we know you've had someone kind of help you along with the process.
How about the bachelor application?
Really, it just gives us an idea of kind of what institutions you've engaged with. So I wouldn't say it's probably a positive just to see that, and it would never be a negative, but it just gives us a little bit more information. Any other details that we can find out about, who you're engaging with and where you've gotten information. So you can see there are a lot of different things, again, mostly based in the US, but they can let us know that you've been involved with these different groups. And then future plans. So undecided, that's absolutely the way to go if you want. If you're really sure about what you want to study, you can put this in here. But what I want to emphasize is this is on the Common App. So this isn't signing you up to be a civil engineer if you select that, when you arrive on campus. This is just to give us an idea of the area that you're interested in studying in. And yeah, if you want to go for a doctorate, shoot for the stars. This is, again, just to kind of show in general, well, to indicate, first of all, which program you're applying for. Of course, if you're applying to another program, you can indicate that here. All right, any questions on the education section before I move along? Great. Now let's do testing. So the area that I showed you, or the slide I showed you with all the standardized test options, this is where you'll put that information. And again, this is the self-reported information. So even if you put in your brilliant SAT scores here, we also need to receive them from SAT, from the College Board, or from your counselor. So this is really an area just to give us your self-reported information that gives us an idea of what we can expect to receive from your counselor. So for most of you, you'll be filling out this international applicants section. And so this is where you'll explain that, yes, you're going to submit your ZNOs. And when we click yes here, you can see that this second box pops up for your senior secondary leaving examinations. And it will ask you the number of tests that you are taking or you plan to take. So this is how you'll indicate that you're submitting predictions. The examination board, I'm not sure we have, yeah, I don't think we have Ukraine on here. So you can just do other and type it out. And then indicate the subject and the score and the prediction and when you expect to take it. So you can do this for all of the exams that you plan to take. So this is where you'll put your self-reported standardized test results. You'll also have to have your counselor submit a form with these predictions as well. But again, I know I'm driving that home, but it's, we have a lot of students who submit this and then are waiting and are wondering why nothing is happening, and it's because we also need it from the other side as well. Also, if you're submitting some kind of English language test, like TOEFL or Cambridge, then you can indicate that here. And again, put in self-reported scores. NYU Abu Dhabi does not require an English language test, mainly because of the candidate weekend, because we get to assess your English language abilities there. But other universities obviously will, and so this is where you can self-report that information. Again, if a university has a requirement for one of these exams, you'll also need to have it sent from the board. All right, and moving on to activities. So this is the area where you'll report on your extracurriculars. So any non-academic, they can be academic related, but something, again, outside the scope of your academics in the classroom. I mentioned before that there's a big range of these. And so you can actually go in and indicate, again, this, as a brilliant student, I've detailed my experience in the XYZ club. But there's actually a big list of types that you can pick out. So robotics, internships, dance, it can be music and all of these things. If you don't find it in this list, you can click other club or activity. So obviously this is a bad example, XYZ club. I have no idea what this is. Apparently I just attended XYZ meetings, which just means I participated, and I don't think admissions is going to be really impressed. I only did it 1 year, and the 10th grade, I spent about an hour a week for 5 weeks. And I don't know that admissions is really going to care about this so much. So if for some reason you find yourself filling out an activity like that, you may want to, reconsider it. If you put guitar and you picked up guitar for like a couple months and then really didn't do anything with it, then that's probably not the accomplishment to include. We want to see that you have, that it's an activity that you've committed to and you've had accomplishments there. So for this example, being a student mentor at a science summer camp. And I went and explained exactly what I did and the things that surrounded that. So providing this context is really, really helpful to admissions. Whatever you choose to list in your extracurricular activities, we want to see this kind of depth. And we also want to see this commitment. Here I did it all 4 years of my secondary school. I even did it during my school break. And I want to work on something like this while I'm at university as well. So these are the kinds of activities, the kind of information that you want to include. So the goal is not to fill out all 10 slots, because you can actually list 10 things here, but it's really quality over quantity. And I also want to emphasize that, especially NYU admissions, has an understanding that there aren't necessarily a lot of extracurricular activities for students from every country, and that a lot of countries, the emphasis is just on academic work, and it's just not built into your life to do these kinds of things. So don't feel pressure to fill this out or feel that you're not accomplished if you can't list off things that are in this list. But as I mentioned before, any of those responsibilities that you take on outside of class that are a demonstration of your maturity and your kind of sense of leadership are good to include here. So now we'll move on to the writing section. This is a really important part of the Common Application. Not all US universities require personal essays, but many of them do. And what I want to emphasize is this essay is very different from a letter of motivation that you might send for a job, or if you're applying to UK universities who want to hear about your academics. This essay is more of a personal reflection. It's almost an artistic endeavor in that we really want to get an idea of who you are and how you see the world. It's kind of like a self-portrait. So this is the part of the application where you put in all of the information that we can't find in the rest of the application. So this isn't the place to list your extracurricular activities. We already have that list. or your grades. We already know how well you're doing in biology class. This is really the part where you get to tell us about your life experiences, what your hopes are, what your dreams are, how you experience the world. So it's important to spend some time on this and do a lot of reflecting. So you'll see here that there are a number of different prompts. So you can choose one of these and respond to it. So of course you want to answer this question, but the ideal shouldn't be to have the perfect answer to this question, but to really use this question as a touchstone, to reveal more about yourself, to let us know things about you, again, that we can't find in other parts of the application. So what I encourage students to do is to look at all of these when you start the process of writing your essay, and write down a few ideas for each of them. Kind of look at them and see, and once you look at those ideas, say, which one of these essays is really bringing out, the most of my personality? Which do I find the most connection with? Which one of these do I have a story to tell about? And then once you've come up with, maybe pick 2 or 3 and start writing a draft. Maybe write the introduction to the essay and ask yourself, does this sound like me? Is this really revealing part of my personality? And maybe pick the one that's really going well and write a full draft and share it with your friend or your teacher and take it to them and say, does this sound like me? Are you getting a sense of who I am and the way I see the world? Get some feedback on how that process is going, and kind of continue to revise and edit and make sure that it's a combination of both a good topic, so the topic is bringing out things that you want to talk about, and a good approach as well. So it's the balance of having a good question and the way that you're answering the question. So for example, there's a question about the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. So sometime when you failed. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So you could say, oh, this one time you were taking a math class and you failed the math class because the teacher was really terrible, but next time when you come to a better university, you'll do better. That kind of essay wouldn't really tell us about your personal abilities. It tells us that maybe you don't take responsibility for your actions, or but by the same turn, having let's say you did have a bad math teacher one year and everyone was really struggling, but you could talk about how you created a study group or how you went to the administration and started up a dialogue to help them understand the problems that were going on. So again, it's about that approach. You can take something that happened that was bad, or this failure, but approach it in a way that shows your personal strengths. So that's something to really keep in mind as you go through these. Again, spend a lot of time working on this draft and getting feedback, because it is a really important part of the application. Any questions on the essay? Okay, great. I think the rest of this doesn't really matter. Disciplinary history, additional information. This is, as the title might suggest, the place for anything else that doesn't fit into the rest of the application.
Sorry, just a short question. So
Sure.
we submit one essay for all grades, right?
Yes, exactly. So this essay, and thanks for bringing this up. So this personal essay will go to every university that you're applying to in the Common App. Again, another reason that you want to keep it a little bit more general and a reflection of yourself, and again, the reason that it's not the place to give specific academic information. We have all of those details. If there's something that hasn't fit in, that you just want to provide additional details, you can attach that here and share it here. NYU also accepts art portfolios. It's not a requirement. For the Abu Dhabi campus, if you have some portfolio that you want to share, then you can submit that, and there's a link on the website that I can show anyone if they're interested. But this is just really any other detail that doesn't fit in.
If you're not picking art major, is still relevant to an art portfolio?
So I would say, if you're not specifically doing the arts, then we don't need a portfolio. But let's say you have some kind of online project that you've done, or you have a YouTube video or something like that. that, nothing kind of over the top, but just like a little bit, if there's a little bit of information. For example, if you have a CV that you want to attach, this could be a good place to put that, or a link to a personal website. Again, it's not guaranteed that admissions will have time to go through all of that, so like don't use this to drop a link to like a whole trove of documents about your entire life. Probably not going to get to that, but anything that you think might help give a little bit more insight within reason, then you could submit. Okay, so that is the common application. So that's all the part that's specifically for the group of universities that you're applying to. Now we'll move over into the My Colleges tab. So these are the requirements for each specific university. You can find out the contact info for admissions, your deadlines, application information, just all of these general details. The writing requirements, of course, that we require the essay. And then here is where you'll find these questions. And I could probably spend a lot of time going over all of these, but I'll just cover the ones for NYU Abu Dhabi. So the start term, fall, all students will start in the fall term. This is where you indicate your campus of interest. So you have a campus of primary interest. If for some reason you're interested in more than one campus, I mean, not that you're just kind of checking them all off and seeing, where you'll get in, but that you do have a genuine interest, that, you've read all about Shanghai and you're really excited, about the possibility to, have a Chinese roommate and learn Mandarin so intensely, but also you think that you could be a fit for NYU Abu Dhabi and that you've looked into, you can study economics there and still take Mandarin. As long as you can explain this in your Why NYU question and tell us, the specific reasons you feel a connection to the campus, then you can add in additional campuses of interest here. So that's here, and even a third campus. If you're really a fit for all three, you can indicate that. This is where you'll indicate whether you're early decision or regular decision. This is where you indicate housing for NYU Abu Dhabi. All students are required to study or to live on campus. So you can click, unless you're a local. And then these are related to other programs at NYU New York. Again, I could stay up here all day explaining all of the different, 200 different programs, but I'll stick with this one. Here's where you'll also indicate what you're submitting as your exam for the test flexible policy. So for you guys, it would be this long paragraph here, your nationally accredited exam. So that would be, and let's see. Yeah. So that will show up here. And if you're submitting an English language test, yes.
Well, if I took my ACT in July,
Uh-huh.
will it still be accessed by the admissions?
So you're taking it after your application?
I have
Or,
taken it in July.
so you've taken it. So it depends on what you want to use as your primary standardized test, because we only require one, and that's what we'll judge. So if you have the ACTs and you want to use that as the primary one, then you can submit that and indicate that here. And then the other one will just be a bonus. I mean, of course, we'll have to see your graduation certificate anyway, but that would just be included in the additional information that you send along. Also, since you'll be applying for financial support, you'll indicate yes here, that you're also filling out this profile. You can find all the links here. Also links to the financial support department, which are a great help, and a lot more help than I am at helping at kind of figuring out the CSS profile. So it's important to get their contact information. Again, US citizens, blah, blah, blah. And then this is the Why NYU question. Again, this is the other short essay, 400 words, where you make this connection between yourself and NYU. So you tell us what kind of fit you think you have, what you've discovered about the university that really excites you, and what you imagine that you can contribute to the university, to the environment there. So it's important to spend some time on this and make that personal connection. Don't just read the website and repeat everything back to us, the things that we already know about the programs we have, but connect it with yourself. And for any university that you're applying to, especially in the US, the liberal arts and sciences universities, they'll want to hear this as well. So do your research, and you may even want to reach out to a professor or to someone in admissions, or to me if you're interested in applying to NYU Abu Dhabi, and just kind of make that connection so that you can say, you know, I talked to this professor and I really want to take this course, or I'm really interested in this particular program. Those kinds of details are important. I think the rest of this is not so relevant. And here's where you, again, you're not signing up to be a civil engineer. You can have some flexibility here, but just your area of primary interest, secondary interest, and even your third area of interest. So if you have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things you're interested in, you can do this as well. I think contacts, this is if you've already applied to NYU once. If you've had family attend NYU and you want to indicate that, you can do that here. So that's the NYU questions section. The next is the people who are writing your letter of recommendation. So we have these details here, where you'll invite recommenders. And here's the counselor that pops up. So you'll have this counselor, and also the teacher, and another recommender if you choose them. So this is basically the portal through which you invite them. You enter in all of their information. They'll receive an email that says, hey, this student wants you to write their letter of recommendation. Will you accept? Hopefully they say yes, and you've started talking to them about this already. And then this basically gives them a login to the other side of your application so that they can go in and submit your official grades and exam scores and letters of recommendation and all of that great stuff. And you'll also be able to monitor it here. So my counselor, who's also myself, started this back in August, but has not been doing very much. So you'll be able to see the recommendation and when all of this has been submitted. So if something's going on, you can get back to them and figure out if they need help. Again, here are the recommender types for your other recommender. And then, once you've gone through this entire process, you've put in all of these details, you will see a submit button here to send in your application, along with a preview of the application. And that will be the end of the line. So you'll receive a confirmation email from the university, know that everything is in place, and then it's just time to wait for your results. So I know that was a lot of really in-depth information, but if you have other questions about the Common App or just NYU in general, I'm happy to take them now.
Is that the new prediction part, or it is just like optional?
So it is optional if you have another test that you're taking. But if the ZNO is the only standardized test that you have, then that's the one that you need to submit. So it fulfills the standardized testing requirements.
How many students are there on the NYU campus, on Abu Dhabi?
The Abu Dhabi campus, there are about 1,300 right now. Yeah, so it's kind of a small liberal arts school size.
Do I get like a smaller chance of admission if I was rejected last year to NYU?
Good question. In general, we tell students who've applied before and not received admission that unless there's been some kind of significant change, if you have something else to include in your application, like if you've been taking courses at university and you've gotten perfect grades there and you've accomplished other things, then your chances won't significantly improve. So we are open to receiving applications, but we do want to see that there's some notable difference from the previous year.
If I have some volunteering service hours, where should I apply them?
For what service hours?
Volunteering.
So that would go into the extracurricular activities section. Yeah.
In activities section, they can say that they have some family responsibilities, and basically, what should I say? Like, if I have, for example, an infant sister, and is it really significant to you?
Yeah. So I'll show you an example. I think I had one of these. It's like here, you can say family responsibilities. I was taking care of my 2 younger brothers, In the afternoons, I took them to football practice. I had to cook dinner for them and help them with their homework, you know, these kinds of details. And you can say when you did it as well. So yeah, that's great to include. Just give us a little bit of that context. Great. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I will draw the presentation to a close and also put up my contact information here. If you're interested in applying to NYU Abu Dhabi and you want more information, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm based here in Europe. I'm based in Budapest, so I'm in the same time zone. And I'm more than happy to take questions about the application process in the university. So thank you all for coming here tonight. I really enjoyed talking to you. And